Hey guys, how's it going? Preparing here. So I got back from my trip from Berlin, and you know, ride there, the ride back, pretty much torture. And I know you guys like to see YouTube videos where I discuss about how miserable some parts of my life are, and a lot of you guys get joy out of this. So we're going to talk about that. Now, yeah, I've pretty much come to the understanding that you know being kind of a big guy and considering the fact that most airplane companies like to, make chairs as small as possible. Really, it's not going to be a good start. It's always going to be hell when you go around places. But every time I travel, it seems like it's a slightly worse experience than the time before. So let's go over what happened, just so you guys understand some kind of reference, right? So about 6 days ago, it's time to go to Berlin. I talked to the guys who organized the event, the Hearthstone stuff, of course. I told them it's like, I kind of want to leave about 8 a.m. or so. If I go at 8 a.m., my dad can help me and drive me over. I don't have to take a taxi. And more importantly, I don't have to miss a day of streaming because, pretty much finish streaming, get a few things done, go to the airport, fly over, maybe get some sleep, get there, start streaming again. But no, we had to leave at about 6 p.m. because they, thought it was more important that they pick me up at a convenient time. So that part kind of sucked. But I get on the plane, and you have to sit like they sit you row by row, so they go with the front rows, and then moves on, and I was in a pretty far back seat. So I sit down, just look at what's going on, about to put on my seatbelt. Like 2 seconds later, a guy in front of me takes his chair and moves it like 45 degrees. And let me tell you something, I'm 6'4". I have pretty big legs, I suppose, for my height. And what happens is there's like the chair in the normal position in the airplane, and then there's like my legs and my knees hitting the chair, and like the bottom of my legs are like curled up underneath the seat. And this time they weren't, because as the person behind me sat down, they put in some pretty large luggage underneath my seat where I curl my legs, and the guy in front of me, he tilted his chair 45 degrees and immediately passed out on the 9-hour flight over to London. And from London I went to Berlin a few hours later. So for pretty much my first time ever, I try not to inconvenience people, but holy shit, man, there was no way I was going to fit in that seat. So I moved my seat back, just a little bit, just enough to where my knees would actually not get crushed by the guy sitting in front of me. And let me tell you, the guy sitting in front of me, he was probably the shortest guy on the plane. So, it wasn't all that bad. These really long flights, they have the entertainment, so they have like some kind of set movies you can watch, and it's not that bad. If you watch movies, time kind of flies by. It's not that big of a deal. But man, it's pretty insane how you really can't fit on these airplanes these days. I mean, it feels like every time I take a plane ride, the seat is smaller than the last. Anyway, so the trip over there, pretty crappy, but what can you expect? The seat thing's not a big deal. The trip back, this is where it got pretty crazy. So the original, 8 to 9 hour ride from Berlin went to New York, and it was pretty okay. I actually saw a pretty good movie. I saw American Beauty. Somehow I managed to miss this gem of a movie, and I was pretty happy that I saw the movie, except for the fact that they shut off the entertainment about half an hour before the plane landed. So I got to like 1 minute before the movie ended, where something very critical happened and the movie shut off. So I had to see the end when I got home. That's no big deal. That's a pretty enjoyable plane ride. So then I get to JFK Airport, and I'm like, well, it's like a 5.5 hour wait time until I gotta layover, I think it's called, until I gotta take the next plane over. But I'm sure I'll just find some kind of food or something, just chill out a little bit, take it easy, plane ride home. We'll make it. So at JFK Airport, I get there, and instead of the other airports that I've been to, like let's say when I go, through Heathrow Airport in London, instead of, you get there and you get off a flight and then you get back on another flight and then that process takes like a few minutes. No, 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 no. You know, JFK Airport or perhaps other airports in the United States, you have to declare that you're entering the United States. So you have to like fill out some kind of card. It's like, why am I doing this? I'm not going to be here for very long. But the reason is they have the airport set up so if you're connecting through the United States, it's as if you are staying there. So you have to fill out that shit. I had to wait in line, and this is the kind of line that's it's like going to an amusement park. You're there in that line for well over an hour, but instead of hearing the cries of little kids getting owned by the roller coasters, you're just watching everyone being depressed in a very hot room where you can hardly breathe. So I'm in here, and I don't know how long this line took because it was a sequence of lines, and I didn't really check the time in between, but it felt like forever. So I'm sitting in this thing to check that like declaration card or some shit. Get out of this line, walk through the airport for quite a while after standing up for what seemed to me like several hours. Then we have to get to a new line because you have to do a security check. So the security check line is another like roller coaster-ish line. It was pretty horrifying. So I get out of this one, and then I feel like I'm walking for another another like 10-20 minutes, getting to where the terminal where the airplane is that I have to take off. And I make it there with 1.5 hours to spare. So I was literally in lines, changing from one flight to another for 4 hours at JFK Airport. So that is pretty mind-blowing that there's that much of a need for security and that much of a need to waste people's time. You have to think about it this way, right? So they wasted like 4 hours of my time there, but there were literally thousands of people there. So the inefficiency is disgusting. Anyway, so I watched some like football game or something. It was pretty amusing because there was quite a lot of guys around the television there that had the football game. I don't watch football, but it was like Dallas Cowboys versus Green Day. I think it's Packers or something. Don't get too mad. I don't watch this shit. I don't even have television. But everyone was like getting super excited. And there was one guy in the back who's no way, no way, and he was doing this for hours. So it was very amusing. So that part was pretty good. But anyway, get on the plane that goes from New York to Toronto, and I sit beside a lady with a baby. And this baby can't be much older than a few months old. And I learned that if you take a very young baby on a flight, it actually costs nothing. So in a way, you're actually encouraged to take your babies on a flight. Wow. Let me tell you what happens when you take a newborn in an airplane. He doesn't like what's going on. He doesn't like the fact that the engine is loud. He doesn't like the fact that, the pressure inside makes him uncomfortable. So he's going to cry. And when you sit beside a crying baby for 2 hours, it's pretty much exactly torture. I can't fit on an airplane, so it's like being in one of those medieval contraptions, and it's like having someone yell in your ear for 2 hours. Now, granted, I was blasting death metal in my headphones during this time, but let me tell you, that didn't do a fucking thing. So, I don't know. I feel they gotta change this policy. It's just totally insane. If either I talked about it on stream yesterday. Either you have to have baby only flights, so the people who bring babies can understand why they're such assholes for doing so. So they can have fun with all the other toddlers. So they can just cry it because all the others are crying. So they can just lose their mind in this shit. So that's fine. Or they need to have like some kind of tax to where if you want to bring your baby and it's under a certain age and it's gonna cry the whole fucking time, it has to your airplane ticket needs to cost like 4 or 5 times as much, and they gotta have like the baby zone where if you're sitting next to a baby, they just give you your money back for the flight or something. Something has to be done because it's just horrible. So after all this, after close to a 24-hour travel time from my hotel room in Berlin to getting home in Toronto, I was pretty much like wiped out last night, and the time difference makes it so it's a little bit challenging to stream in the times where I normally stream, so the next few days is going to be a little bit rough. But anyway, just thought I'd share with you guys some of the misery of flying, so you guys can stay home and play video games and feel much better about it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Finally.